Somebody called for you.
Yeah, who?
Guy with strange voice. Said he'd call you back. He sounded just like a duck.
Just like a duck.
Mr. Fulci, I've seen all your films. I've read all the scripts, the screenplays, the notes. I understand now why you're in this state of confusion.
The boat can leave now. Tell the crew.
Contraband, also known as Luca the Smuggler, is a 1980 Frizzi film directed by Lucio Fulci. Notably, it remains the only entry Fulci made within the Frizzi genre, arriving during a pivotal moment in his career between Zombie 2 and City of the Living Dead. As a result, it is sometimes overshadowed by his more widely recognised horror output. However, Contraband has carved out a distinct reputation within the genre, often cited as one of its most violent and uncompromising entries. The question then is what sets this film apart, and whether Fulci truly delivers. The film follows Luca, played by Fabio, a mainstay in the subgenre and Italian cinema in general. He plays a smuggler operating in Naples' criminal underworld, primarily dealing in contraband cigarettes, alongside his brother Mickey. Luca is deeply entrenched in organised crime, with connections to powerful figures across the city. When Mickey is assassinated and Luca narrowly escapes the same fate, his focus shifts entirely to revenge, as he navigates a web of betrayal and escalating violence. Luca uncovers a ruthless new power rising within the criminal hierarchy, one systematically eliminating rival figures while law enforcement intensifies its crackdown. The narrative is punctuated by brutal set pieces and mounting tension, culminating in a cinematic shootout set in a desolate neighbourhood, where the body count escalates dramatically. The film's relentless pace and bleak tone reinforce its reputation as one of the harsher entries in the Frizzi canon. Despite being sandwiched between two of Fulci's most iconic horror films, Contraband stands firmly on its own merits. Its enduring popularity among fans is easy to understand. Testi delivers a compelling performance as the charismatic yet hardened Luca, supported by a strong ensemble cast familiar to followers of the genre. Behind the camera, Fulci collaborates with several of his regular creative partners, including cinematographer Sergio Savati, composer Fabio Frizzi, and makeup artist Franco Di Girolamo. Their combined contributions give the film a distinctive visual and auditory identity that aligns closely with Fulci's broader body of work. When receiving the original screenplay, the higher-ups were very unhappy, and Fulci ended up revising the script along with Giorgio Maurizio to punch up the gore and improve on what was written. The additional graphic violence and sleaze lends the film a recognisable Fulci touch, blending the conventions of crime cinema with the visceral brutality more commonly associated with his horror films. This fusion results in a particularly mean-spirited tone that helps distinguish Contraband from his contemporaries. A few notable points of trivia. Fulci himself makes a memorable cameo appearance as an aging mobster in what is often regarded as one of his most entertaining on-screen roles. The film was released in the UK under the alternative title The Naples Connection. The track You Are Not the Same, composed by Frizzi with lyrics from both Frizzi and Fulci, features in a standout scene and leaves a lasting impression. Production encountered financial difficulties early on, reportedly requiring additional funding from real-life smugglers, some of whom even offered input on the film's depiction of the criminal activity shown. With that, we can now move on to the Blu-ray release and my personal thoughts on Contraband. Right, this will be the section where I take a closer look at the Blu-ray release of the movie. Again, in this section, it'll be a little bit more personal, a little bit more intimate, following no script, so it's just going to be a bit of rambling. Again, my own thoughts of the movie, looking in depth with the release, and yeah, just again, anything that I didn't want to cover in the review section will be covered in this section. Like I said, it's going to be a little bit more off the cuff, just again, just talking. So here we go. We've got the Cauldron release of Contraband. Came out a few years ago now. I'm not too familiar with Cauldron, to be honest. Obviously, I've been keeping an eye on what they're releasing, and they're releasing a lot of really unique and obscure titles that I'm not seeing being released anywhere else at the moment. So always glad to support a label like this. I've recently picked up the 4K City of the Living Dead release, just the standard one, but it is a free discer. Checked that out, blown away by it. So as soon as I saw this pop up, I had to grab it. Again, going through a doing this Fulci journey, you know, I've wanted to add it to the collection for a long time. Obviously, this was a first time watch for me as well, so I was just really pleased to get my hands on a solid release of this movie. It's funny because we went years and years and years without a release of Contraband, and now we've had two in the space of a few years with this release, and just recently Shameless have released Contraband over here in the UK. Again, looks like a solid release, bunch of extras, nice slipcover. It's Shameless have really upped their game in terms of just quality and titles they're releasing at the moment, so really pleased to see that on UK shelves again. But here is the Cauldron release. It's region free, so again, no issues with that. They've used a variation on the original cover art, which is nice to see. We've got Lucio Fulci uncensored, and again, if you're familiar with any of his bigger titles, now watching Contraband, I understand why this is on here. I spoke about it briefly, but the gore really did take me back in this, to be fair. There's a few set pieces that were quite shocking, to be honest. Again, with this section of the video is going to be quite spoiler heavy, so just a heads up. But there's a sequence where a woman is having her face burned, and again it keeps coming back to it, and you see more and more damage, flesh being, you know, burned off, exposing bone structure behind. And again, it's for the time, even though it's Fulci, so you expect, you know, some brutal gore. Again, not being familiar with the Polizei subgenre, I was quite shocked by that, but I know Contraband is it stands out in this subgenre due to its heavy gore, so I can definitely see why. But yeah, a few sequences, a brutal chest shooting later on in the film. Again, it reminds me of those chest bursting scenes from Contamination. And there's a pretty gnarly throat shooting as well at some point, which again took me by surprise, but really well done. So if you come here for the gore, you won't be disappointed. But there's the spine. Don't think it's going to focus. There we go. Again, just simple but effective. Got the logo at the bottom, Cauldron 007, so a fairly early release. Like I said, Cauldron have been around for a few years now, but they're pumping out the titles at the moment. There's the back. Nice selection of special features, new interviews with some of the stars, archival interviews as well, with the likes of Fabio, Frizzi and Sergio Savati. We have a commentary by Bruce Holchek, Troy Howarth and Nathaniel Thompson. You know, if you're familiar with any of those guys' works, you know that it's always quality. I look forward to seeing them on these kind of releases, especially when it comes to Italian horror. You know, they really know their stuff, so it's always a pleasure to listen to them. But a few stills at the bottom. Again, the transfer, the actual video quality is stunning. Yeah, no negatives when it comes to that. They have released this movie in somewhat of a special edition, I think, which I believe is long out of print now, but I think it might have came with the CD soundtrack. I'm not entirely sure, but it had a nice slip box, different cover art, so again, if you see that, you know, it's probably worth grabbing. But like I said, this one I picked up pretty cheap. It was about £12, I think, so can't go wrong. Like I said, region free. But if we open it up, as you can see, just plain yellow text on black, but again, really effective. If we pop the disc out quickly, you can see the alternative cover art, which looks to be the original Italian cover art, which again is really nice. Yeah, nice to have the option there for the original cover art. But overall, just for the release itself, just a really solid, all-round great release, no issues whatsoever. Like I said, I'm really pleased to add it to the collection. It was a first time watch. I've been wanting to watch it for a while now, but just never, like I said, there was never really a modern release of it. I think the last release I'm aware of, especially in the UK, was the Shameless DVD, and that was well over 10 years ago, I think, probably longer, closer to 15 maybe, I'm not sure, but it was really nice to get this updated. And yeah, transfer, I watched it with the English dub. Yeah, audio was perfect as well, no issues, and again, just really enjoyed The experience with this, I can see, I mean, it's funny because it's in the middle of arguably two of his most beloved films and important films in his filmography, which is obviously Zombie Flesh Eaters and City of the Living Dead. You know, this movie probably quickly got forgotten about or just, you know, buried under his next few years of just wall-to-wall classics. But I mean, I think it's always had quite a strong reception when it comes to the fans, and you know, when it comes to the Polizei fans. So, you know, and obviously it being a Fulci film, it's always got that interest. But I can, you know, after watching it, I really did think it was a solid film. Like I said, it's a shame that Fulci didn't do more Polizei films, with this being his only one. But I'm definitely intrigued to check out more of the subgenre. Like I said, I'm really not too familiar with it, so you know, I think this is a good starting base to jump off from. So any recommendations, please leave it in the comments. But yeah, like I said, for the first Fulci film in this series, and again it being a first time watch, I think it's got off to a really good start, to be honest. A standout scene for me from the film was the disco scene, which, you know, if you are not prepared for it, I mean, it's probably the most epileptic, strobe-inducing few minutes I've ever seen on film. Doesn't mess about, but, you know, Fulci handles it with such just skill that it really showcases that he can do anything. He can go into any genre, any time period, any setting, and just, again, aesthetically, it's just so pleasing. And like I said, that scene was a standout for me in this. It probably helped that the song back in the scene was a total earwormer. Obviously composed by the maestro Fabio Frizzi, but also had input lyrically by Fulci himself. Since watching it, that song has been replayed hundreds of times. I mean, again, people who've seen it know exactly what I'm talking about, but it's such a, you know, cheesy, but yeah, just a fun little track. And like I said, it gets stuck in your head for days. But yeah, it's just, the gore was brutal, acting was solid. Fabio Testi I'm not overly familiar with. I know he kind of found his little niche with Polizei films, and I can understand why. Again, he plays the, you know, the hard man really well. But what I appreciated in this was he wasn't indestructible. You know, he took a battering, he took a few beatings, retreated, licked his wounds, came back out swinging. You know, he definitely got a sense. It felt quite grounded. You know, large scale scenes of police busts and raids and stuff like that, and, you know, panic in the streets. It, you know, it did have like quite an epic scale to it. So yeah, it was a pleasure from start to finish, really. No complaints, no issues. And like I said, for the first film in this series, yeah, I'm really pleased with it. You know, let's just see what comes next, and if Fulci can keep this streak. But so far so good. But thank you for watching. Hope you enjoyed the review, and again, I'll be back next week with the next movie. We'll take it from there. But again, thank you so much for watching. We really appreciate it. And again, hope you all have a good day. Take care.